Hello and welcome to the first Panther Politics Show where we talk all things politics. I'm your host, Mikayla Newton, and I'm joined with my correspondents for today's show, Cecil Hannibal and Chip Matthews. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having me. You know, when Chip's here, I got to come with them. Tag team.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get into our first story. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms signed an ordinance that eliminates cash bonds as a requirement to secure release from the City of Atlanta Detention Center following arrests for certain nonviolent offenses. So guys, there's no question that, we definitely need reform within our system. So what do you think about this new ordinance? Do you think that it can be a positive or a negative thing?
So I think it could definitely have its positives, right? You have a lot of people in this country who can't afford bail. Right? Not every crime deserves prison sentence. And if you can't afford to bail out of jail for a nonviolent offense, you could spend up to 30 days in prison, right, with people who are committing these violent crimes. Mm-hmm. So in what sense is that fair? And we live in a country that's making profits off of jail time, right? So I think something does need to be done. And mass incarceration is one of our major problems, especially in the black community.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Chip?
I agree 100% with Cecil. This is the land of how do they say it? You're innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
Yes.
So I feel like by you not being able to get out of jail to defend yourself, by you sitting in jail, then that seems like you are guilty. And by you having to pose a monetary bail, which is what it is, you're paying money to get out of jail, I feel like that's money you're not going to get back. So it's kind of like you're guilty and you're proving yourself innocent by paying money. I don't agree with it at all.
So I do agree with you both, but I do think that our first priority is to ensure safety within our communities. And so when I first read about this ordinance, I read that it was about nonviolent crimes. So I think that that's important to understand, is that it's nonviolent crimes. But I think that before reading, I thought that it wasn't nonviolent. So if it were not to be nonviolent, then I thought that it would definitely depend on the crime, on the type of crime. So I do agree with you both. Let's move on to the next story.
The question of whether or not people should be allowed to own, at the very least, automatic and semi-automatic weapons is not a political one. It is a question of life and death, and it needs to stop being a question of politics.
2 weeks ago in Parkland, Florida, 17 students and staff were shot dead at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. This replaced the 1999 Columbine High School massacre as the deadliest shooting in America. So this raises a huge question about gun control, and the question is, where do we go from here?
I'll let you take it first.
Well, gun control seems to be a really big issue. It's been in the headlines off and on for years now. And let me just say this, I feel like it is a joke. We do have the Second Amendment right, which allows us to bear arms. Let it just be that. If we start to tighten the rein on who can possess a gun, then they're just going to move on. If people want to do if they want to commit, mass murders in, different settings, whether it's schools, nightclubs, or, just on the streets, if it's not a gun, it'll be a pipe bomb. If it's not a pipe bomb, it'll be a grenade, or it'll be, I don't know, some kind of huge machete. So by trying to take guns out of people's hands, I think that, that violates the rights of some people. Myself, I'm a gun owner, and I feel like I'll be the one who the gun control affects the most. They already have it fixed where you can't have a gun if you're a felon. You can't have a gun if you're under 21 if it's a handgun, 18 if it's a rifle. I mean, how tight do they want to make this?
I think, go ahead.
So for me, I try to keep personal out of politics, right? But these are 17 children who died, right, over some maniac with a gun, right? Something needs to be done. We can't have another. Mass shootings have become so desensitized that we say, oh, another one.
Yeah.
When you're
another
saying
crazy person that committed this crime.
When you can say another one, that means there's a problem.
Yeah.
So I get the Second Amendment, I get the right to bear arms, but these are laws passed in 1776.
Right.
This is 2018.
So what happens when they start using bombs then, or grenades? Are you going to outlaw those as well?
So for example, look at the UK, right? The UK has nowhere near as many gun deaths as we do, right? Okay. Their problems are with like knives and stuff like that. And even their police, there's less police shootings altogether. I think our gun problem is so rooted into our culture that, of course, it's not possible to just end guns altogether, right? Guns are always going to be a part of our society, but we have to try. We have to do something.
Yeah, and I definitely think that there should be more gun control. Like, if you were to go and buy a gun, there should be restrictions, backgrounds in the process to where not everyone, it can't be so accessible to just get a gun, because things like this won't be able to happen. And I'm not saying that, someone won't be able to just get a gun and just commit these murders or any type of crimes, but I think that we need way more gun control that we have now, or that we should have.
When I hear gun control, the people I think will be affected the most are minorities. And you're gonna look around, and one day the only people with guns are gonna be the police, who are already killing minorities at an alarming rate. So if you take guns out of minorities' hands, which is what I think gun control ultimately means, then we won't be able to protect ourselves. And we're already having a hard enough time protecting ourselves with the gun laws that we do have.
So that's not a bad point, but when has a gun ever stopped the police from shooting African Americans?
That's a good point.
It never has. So that's not a part of the problem. The problem is you have deranged people who have the ability to get real firearms in their hands. I'm not saying you have to end guns I'm not saying you have to stop people from having guns, right? Everybody has a right to have a weapon, but the fact that AR-15s are sold in stores, what do you need an AR-15 for?
Let me ask you this. If you knew that everybody in the room with you had a gun, would you act differently?
So let me pose a question, or a solution actually. Do you guys think that we should have mental health screenings? Because at the end of all this is what it comes back to, is mental health. And they always say that, this guy was mentally ill. I think that we should have more mental health screenings even before purchasing a gun.
I agree with the mental health screenings, definitely, but I feel like a background check is just code word for, let's see what kind of dirt this guy did, and let's find a reason not to give him a gun. Traffic violations have stopped me from getting positions, at jobs sometimes, and it's a traffic violation. What if the job isn't for driving, then, so I just feel like that creates more gray area.
Okay.
I definitely think more screenings need to be involved. Definitely mental screenings. I don't know if that'll solve it necessarily, but I'm not in Congress, so I can't tell you what needs to be done, right? That's not my place. But as human beings in this country, we need to find a way to make it more difficult for people to have deadly weapons in their possession.
Okay.
Let me just throw one more thing. If that young man had walked into that Florida high school and teachers and more security guards had been there with guns, he would have got gunned down.
So you think teachers should have guns now? Is the librarian going to have a silencer?
I don't
Is that
I saw that
what we're going to do?
I saw that meme too. Yes, I think so.
History teachers going to have muskets too? We're going to have. Is that how it's going to go?
We live in the land of clapping back, correct?
I guess so.
Okay, guys, let's move on. Over the past year, I've covered a lot of stories surrounding the issue of gentrification. It all started with a story about Ismail Hooney and the Turner Field Coalition, who were against the buying of Turner Field to be transformed into what we now know as a Georgia State Stadium, in protest of gentrification of the surrounding neighborhoods. And for those of you that don't know, gentrification is the process of renovation of deteriorated urban neighborhoods by means of the influx of more affluent residents. So guys, do you think that gentrification can be a positive thing in your community or a negative thing?
So gentrification is a touchy topic, especially for African Americans.
Definitely.
Right? Because you have, what used to be the hood, now there's a Starbucks and Chipotle.
Right.
Inglewood's not even the hood anymore.
Yeah.
Inglewood is, they have nice middle class homes in Inglewood. Like, who would ever thought that? Like, you go to California thinking you're about to see Boys in the Hood, and you're at some smoothie place drinking juice. And I think, gentrification can be bad, but you have to look at it in a developing way, right? I think if you're not pushing people out of their neighborhoods, then it's a good thing. If you're actually renovating and developing these lower class neighborhoods to be, I guess, more modern, more 2018, more, better, then it's a good thing.
Well, yeah, so I think that that's the root of the issue, is that there's an increase on the rents in these neighborhoods. So that's basically what's pushing these people out of their communities, is the influx on their homes. So what do you think, Chip?
It's case by case. There's good examples of gentrification, and there's bad examples. I'll start with the good. I was recently in New Orleans, and I was talking to someone who's from there, been there since the 80s, and he told me that after the storm, because they refer to the storm a lot, after the storm, they didn't build the projects back, and which pushed a lot of people out. But what they were able to do for the people who lived in the projects, who wanted to come back, is they gave them vouchers to supplement their rent in the new higher rent zoned areas. So I feel like if we did the same thing with that, with gentrification, yes, you might tear down somebody's hood, as he put it, but if you give them a voucher or make sure that they can afford to stay there, then I think that's a powerful thing. Other than that, it's bad because, you know, these people already, nobody wants to live in the projects. I mean, there might be one or two people who love it, but no one wants to live in the projects. So they're there because that's all they can afford. So if you tear down the projects, then where are they gonna go? You're forcing more homelessness, and you're forcing people to do things, to break the laws in order to get more money to afford to live, you know, where they're from. So,
So one thing I think in the city of Atlanta, Atlanta's unique because, you know, it's a beautiful city, right? But when you look at our downtown area, no, we don't have a thriving downtown. You look at Chicago, New York, LA, their downtowns are places to be. Ours isn't. Right. So I think, you know, with them changing underground, right, building the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium, that's bringing more business over there, more people that want to buy homes in that area. It's increasing the tax on the properties, but these are places that need to be developed.
Okay.
and if you think about it, the cost of living has always gone up. You know,
Always.
Yeah.
inflation is what, 6% a year? So,
Especially in major cities, and Atlanta is definitely a major city right now.
and we have to get rid of eyesores. I think some of these neighborhoods are honestly eyesores. So I think it is a good thing to go in there to remodel, but it's a bad thing when you're pushing people out.
Okay, so let me pose a question to you both. So if someone came to your home and say, I want to buy your home, and we're going to pay you $1 million to buy your home, to, you know, destroy it completely to build something else, would you take that $1 million and move somewhere else into a better home, or would you want to stay in your same home because you've been here for so long?
I think it's very based off circumstance. So I'll give you an example myself. My family's from Louisville, Kentucky. We live across from the Kentucky Derby, right? Like the tracks, like that's a huge world tourist spot. Like people come from all over the world to see the Derby, and we live across from the stadium. So they've approached us about buying my great grandfather built that house, and we always say no, right? And not because we're against gentrification, but because we want to wait and see how much it's worth in 10 years, right? Because I feel like we get tricked out of people, not even just African Americans, just people in general, get tricked out of their property too early, right? They're selling for $50,000 because they've never seen $50,000 before in their lives.
Good point.
Right? But in 5 to 10 years, it's just gonna keep going.
Yeah.
That property value is not going down. This is a booming area, especially by the dome now. Those properties are gonna keep rising. So don't sell now. Wait till it's at its peak and you're ready to make that $150,000 off that property.
Well, she didn't say 50,000, and she didn't say 150,000. She said $1 million.
$1 million.
I'm gonna take the $1 million and I'm gonna move next door and let them buy that property from me too, and then I'll have $2 million.
Okay, so that's all the time we have for today's show. Thank you so much to my correspondents Cecil and Chip for your debate today. So subscribe to our YouTube channel at Panther Politics with Mikayla Newton, and follow us on Instagram at Panther Politics. I'm Mikayla Newton. Thanks for watching.